All right, hey everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about the improvements that have been made to our documentation editor. But just as important, I'll be discussing the collaboration process that we underwent with the amazing grad team who made this new feature a reality. So let's get on into it. So a few months ago, the grad team, including wonderful Amanda and Harvey, approached us with a project idea. They wanted to make a pretty major contribution to Data Hub by replacing our documentation editor. We'd been hearing feedback for some time that our editor was lacking, shall I say, but we hadn't quite, prioritized it because there was a lot of other projects that we were trying to tackle, but we knew that it was important anyways. So after they approached us, we agreed this would just be the perfect fit to have a project that we collaborate on, as it's a pretty heavy lift. We wanted to say in the design and outcome, but we, like I said, didn't have time to do it ourselves in the short term. I'll talk a little more about what the collaboration process looked like here in a sec. But first, why exactly did they want to make updates to the documentation editor? For any of you that have used our editor before, you may not be surprised by this change. But for those unfamiliar, the grad team had been hearing a lot of feedback that our editor was difficult to use. It required at least some familiarity with Markdown, which is off-putting for a lot of users, as you can imagine. The side-by-side editing experience was confusing and frustrating. Most people want and expect a what you see is what you get editor nowadays. And it also lacked a lot of functionality that was desired in a rich text editor. I'll dive deeper into how nice this new editor here is in a little bit. You can see on the bottom here a quick comparison between the old on the left and the new experience on the right. So now I'll talk a little bit about what the collaboration process looked like between the grad team and us. I'll just say right now, collaborating with the grad team was an absolute pleasure. I think our process was smooth, it was easy to repeat, and definitely something we could bring to projects in the future. First, we set up a few weekly and then bi-weekly meetings to establish some goals, outline the scope of the project, and then check in on progress. After we'd established what we thought we were trying to accomplish, we discussed technical design. So would this require a new aspect? What format would we store the documentation in the database? How are we going to be backwards compatible with existing documentation? If we store documentation in a different format, would that break anyone's existing workflows? For the last question, we decided to go out to the community and ask around, which I think is another great example of how awesome you guys are in informing decisions that we make with the product. We actually discovered that a lot of people do rely on the documentation being stored as Markdown in the database, as they use that and query for it in outside APIs. And so they use that outside of Data Hub even. This is great to know and informed our decision to continue storing this as Markdown. So after all the goals and design questions had been settled, the grad team went out and they just built this thing. It was pretty awesome. Honestly, the final part of the process was just them putting up a really awesome PR. We reviewed it, QA'd it, went back and forth a little bit, and then we just merged that guy right on in there. Honestly, we couldn't be more happy with how this whole thing turned out. So again, I can't say this enough. Shout out to the grad team, specifically Amanda and Harvey. They were amazing. You guys rock. I'll also say the only reason that they're not here talking with you all right now is due to some busyness and highly deserved time off around the holidays. But all right, without further ado, let's check out this new doc editor together, shan't we? So we're going to go to the Snowflake table called pets. Let's check out the documentation. Pretty weak, if you ask me. So let's edit it together. So the first thing you're going to notice is that it is a single pane instead of dual pane, where on the left we had Markdown and on the right we had a preview of what it would look like, which always wasn't perfectly accurate, to be honest. But yeah, let's revamp this guy and make it a little bit better. First thing, let's add a title. You'll notice that we have multiple different options for headings, as opposed to before we had heading or not heading. You can now have subheadings. Pretty cool. Let's call it pets. Another cool thing is that we have this handy dandy little rich text editor right here when you highlight something. So I'll make that bold. We also still support keyboard shortcuts. So if I do Command I, we can make that italics, for example. And then another cool thing that I'd like to highlight for everyone is that we now support full screen viewing and editing of the documentation of any asset. So let's edit the rest of this here in the full screen mode. I don't know about you, but plain text, a little boring. So let's add an image here. I saved this image URL over here. So let me get that for you guys. And save it. Wow, absolutely adorable. However, way too big. Another new feature, is that we support resizing of images, which we did not before, and that makes using images in documentation so much better. And these guys really spruce up our documentation, if you ask me. Now on to my favorite, I think, new feature with this new editor is the ability to mention any entity in Data Hub right here in Docs. So for example, in this case, let's say I know that this pets table is used by the weekly adoption projection Explore. Explore, all you have to do is @ symbol. I'll start typing. And then we get all the options. I'm going to select this one. And after you select it, you can hover and you can now see that we have a little like hover tooltip. I can go to it and open up a new tab, see a preview of that documentation, some tags, there'll be ownership if it's there, all that sort of good stuff. So that's pretty great. Like I said, this exists for any entity in Data Hub. So that's like data sets, charts, explorers, users, glossary terms, anything. It's pretty great. So I'm pretty excited about that one, obviously. Another thing that I'll show you guys, and sorry if I just keep rolling here, there's just so many features and so little time, is a new and improved code block editor. So now we have special syntax highlighting for pretty much any language that you could think of. It's very widely, covers a large array. So let's say I want to write some SQL. We can have specific syntax for SQL. Pretty cool. All right, and then also we still support the same functionality that we had before in our previous editor. So all the same stuff, bold, italic, underline, strike through, ordered lists, unordered lists, code blocks, links. But something new is now we support tables in our editor. So let me fill this out for you guys just to give you an idea of what it might look like. Yep, we're going to talk about dogs and we're going to talk about cats. I think we all agree that both are cute. All right, so I think that's pretty good. I'll save this and just show you guys what it looks like in the full screen. Go back. And I think that's pretty good for my demo. Let me go back to these slides over here. Cool. So when will this be available? The new editor is already merged and currently on head. So you guys might have noticed I was on the demo site right there for the demo that I was giving. So you can feel free to go check it out yourself. But it will be available in our next release. Also, finally, for anyone hoping to make a larger contribution and wanting to collaborate with the core team, please reach out to Maggie to see if it's something that makes sense to work on together, and then we can facilitate next steps. And that's it for me. Thanks, everybody.